There might be a lot of written tutorials out there here online for, what settings to use inside of OBS Studio, or heck, even Streamlabs OBS, for how to get everything set up correctly the first time for streaming over on Twitch. Now, yes, there are a lot more tutorials out there for other platforms, but this one here, we're going to be sticking on how to stream to Twitch with the best settings possible, okay? And keep in mind here, folks, yes, there might be some secret sauce setting that you use, but I'm going to go ahead and use the settings that Twitch themselves actually recommends on their essentially their how to stream page. You know what I mean? So with that being said, folks, if you are a visual learner like me and you have to actually see somebody else doing something to figure out how to get things done, go ahead and follow along, and let's kind of just hop in here, shall we? All right, here everybody. First, all you got to do is this here, okay? Go down to settings. You want to go to stream. And right here, you can actually log in inside of OBS Studio to your Twitch account. And that way there, you can go ahead and stream without the need of getting your stream key from your Twitch account on the website, because since your account is connected directly here to OBS Studio, everything is right there for you as soon as you log in, okay? So after you get logged in here to OBS with your Twitch account, go ahead and go down here to output. Now, I always tell people that if you have an NVIDIA graphics card that is at minimum, in my opinion again, at minimum here, a GTX 1070 or any RTX card, so the 2000 series, 3000 series, whatever you might have, you always want to go ahead and use NVIDIA NVENC H.264 new. And in case you don't know what that there is, the NVIDIA encoder is an actual separate dedicated chip on all new NVIDIA graphics cards. I believe it goes all the way back to the GTX 600 series, if I remember correctly, that actually offloads all encoding operations from the graphics core. In other words, it takes the strain off of your CUDA cores that you use to actually play games with, and it does all the encoding on a separate chip with little to no performance loss, or in these days here, zero performance loss on your system, or more importantly, in games and on stream, okay? So again, if your GPU is compatible, go ahead and use the NVIDIA NVENC encoder. For rate control, you want to do CBR. Now, Twitch does recommend at max a 6000 kilobit per second bit rate for your streams. So with this type of bit rate here, you can get by with 720p 30 frames per second, or if you prefer 720p 60 frames per second here, okay? And here's the thing, folks. I know that there are a lot of people out there that do stream at that weird resolution. It's 1664 by 936, and you see it show up on a Twitch player as 936p. And it's a little bit sharper than 720p, but not as taxing as full-on 1080p. And here's the thing, okay? Yes, it does look nice. It does look very, very good, but I actually don't recommend people stream on that resolution, only because if they go and take that 936p stream and upload it to another website like YouTube, for example, so they can, have a full-on VOD off of Twitch for their streams and whatnot, instead of being bumped up to 1080p, that stream will only show up on YouTube in 720p. A matter of fact, I don't even believe if you stream at 936p natively to YouTube Gaming, it will only show up as 720p, and 936p will not actually show up. Okay, now yes, it is a true 16:9 resolution, so therefore it can go evenly in both 720p and 1080p. But another thing you have to consider too here, folks, is that some, smart devices out there, like, modern day phones can play it no problem. But I know that some of my viewers before have told me that, they were trying to watch my stream before on their Chromecast, their Apple TV, even sometimes their, ironically here, their Amazon Fire Sticks, even their Amazon Fire Sticks, the ones that can do 4K and stuff now. They told me that they were only able to see either 720p, or my stream just straight up would not load for them at all because it was having an issue with that funky new resolution I was streaming at, again, 1664 by 936. So if you're going to stream, again, I do recommend you stick to either 720p or full-on HD at 1920 by 1080, okay? But just for the sake of everybody being, they're able to view your content without buffering or no transcoding options, especially if you're not an affiliate, let's go ahead and just assume you're going to be streaming at 720p at 60 frames per second here, okay? So again, bitrate 6000 kilobits per second. By default, keyframe interval is set to 0, but you want to go ahead and erase that and set that to 2. Again, that is what Twitch recommends. Now for a preset, I always keep mine here on quality. Now keep in mind here, folks, you can go up to max quality. And essentially what that does is that it enables 2-pass encoding on the stream. But from what I also read, that can also dig into your actual CUDA performance instead of just sticking to the NVENC encoder chip on the graphics card itself, okay? It needs a bit of extra oomph to get that better looking encode going on with that max quality 2-factor enable, okay? Or 2-pass, I should say, excuse me. I'm thinking of authorization here. It's been a long day. So I just tell people to go ahead and keep the preset here for the NVENC encoder to quality. Now for your profile, go ahead and keep that on high. Look ahead and psycho-visual tuning. I also recommend you keep these here off for streaming. If you want to leave them on for, you know, a local recording, go right ahead. But keep in mind here, folks, that both of these settings here, just like the max quality, they also kind of sort of dig into your CUDA performance as well, okay? So if you're playing a game that's really not too graphically intensive or not really too taxing on your graphics card, go right ahead and turn these on. But for the most part, you want to go and keep these here off, okay? Now, GPU 0. In other words, folks, what this means is that GPU 0 is the very first graphics card in your system. So if you only have one graphics card in your system, it should be 0 by default here, okay? Or if you have two, graphics card 1 is going to be 0 and graphics card 2 is going to be 1, because, you know, everything with computer systems starts at 0 and goes up from there. You know what I mean? So again, if you only have one GPU, this should always be 0. Now again, for max B frames, want to go ahead and set this here to 2, and this is what Twitch recommends on their live stream support site, and I also support this as well here, okay? Now you might be thinking, whoa, wait a minute, Terry, what about those of us that want to use our CPU? Well, not a problem, okay? Let's say you have an AMD graphics card, or maybe you have such an old NVIDIA graphics card that you're not able to use the NVENC encoder, okay? Not a problem at all, folks. All you got to do is this here. Click the little drop down menu here and click on X264. For the bitrate, you want to go ahead and use that 6K one more time. Keyframe interval, want to go ahead and set that to 2 as well. And then for the CPU usage preset, you got to remember here, okay, folks, the lower you go on this list, the slower the preset is and the more demanding on your CPU it will become, okay? So, with that being said here, folks, what I always recommend to people is that if you are running a quad-core CPU with hyperthreading, go ahead and keep it on very fast, or you can use one of the even faster presets. Now, keep in mind, your stream quality will suffer with that a little bit, but at least you'll be able to play the game without any sort of noticeable performance loss in game here, okay? Now, if you're running at minimum a 6-core 12-thread CPU, very fast or faster is where you want to stay, okay? Now, if you're running an 8-core CPU or higher, and that includes the Ryzen 12 cores, the Ryzen 16 core, you can actually take this all the way down to medium preset here if you want to. But keep in mind here, though, folks, is that all of this will be totally dependent on your own system based off of what type of game that you play and what type of CPU you have here, okay? Yeah, I might have just gave you a little basic, quick and dirty rundown, but what it really depends on here, folks, is that again, the lower you go on this list here, the slower the preset, which means the more time the CPU spends to actually encode a stream. So if you're playing a really, really CPU demanding game, you might not be able to run fast or medium. You might have to bump that back up to faster just so your in-game performance isn't suffering here, okay? So this is going to be a real big trial and error, so just take that there for what you will. See which preset here gives you the best looking stream without impacting your gameplay too much, and just go from there, okay? Now for profile, you want to go and set that to high. For tune, go ahead and just keep that on none. And then for X264 options, you want to type in B frames equals 2. After that, hit apply and you're good to go. Now, As far as your audio bit rate here, go ahead and crank this up to 320. Why? Because Twitch says you can. And if you want the highest fidelity audio you can get, this is what you want to do here, okay? Now for video, folks, for video, I promise you we are almost done here, okay? I promise we're almost done. Now for video, this is kind of controversial here, okay? Because you'll hear people say different things like, no, you want to keep your base canvas resolution at the resolution that, you know, your monitor is, or the resolution that the game you're playing is, and then you want to just outscale the output. But here's the thing, folks. If you have a smaller base canvas resolution, that's just less system resources that your system is using to downscale it on an output. You know what I mean? So if you have a smaller base canvas resolution paired with a much smaller output scaled resolution, it's just less taxing overall, okay? Which is why whenever I switch back here, you will see that my base canvas resolution I actually have set to 720p, and then my output resolution is also 720p, okay? So again, on modern day systems, I really don't think this is a big deal if you want to just keep this at 1920 by 1080, because, you know, graphics cards are a lot more powerful than what they were just, you know, 5-6 years or so ago. Same thing for CPUs, but I mean, I would just keep this the same, just to keep everything 1-to-1. You know what I mean? So, as you remember up here, folks, for our streaming bit rate, we have 6,000 kilobits per second here. Okay, now that is good for both 60 frames per second at 720p and 30 frames per second at 720p. Now, I don't know what kind of system you have, okay? Obviously, I don't know what type of hardware you have, if you have a little budget low power box, or if you have a mid-range build, or you can even have a supercomputer. I don't know what you're watching this video on here, okay? So what I recommend is you go ahead and do a test recording with those stream settings and see how your system handles recording with those settings at 60 frames per second. Now, if you're having some trouble, or if you're noticing your in-game performance isn't up to par with what you're used to because of the added load of recording or streaming at 60 frames per second, go ahead and drop that down to 30 frames per second. Just a little drop down here. I'll show you right here, okay? It's a little drop down right here. Drop that down to 30. And then after that, do another test recording to see if your system performs a little bit better. Now, folks, as I said a second ago, these settings here can be transferred 1-to-1 to Streamlabs OBS as well, or again, commonly known as slobs. The settings interface essentially is the exact same as OBS Studio, so you can still follow this tutorial if you want as well. Now, I get a lot of questions online, especially whenever I am streaming. Hey, Terry, you know, my stream looks kind of choppy, it looks kind of fuzzy, it looks kind of just doesn't look as sharp as I think it should. Why is that? And well, come to find out, they are trying to stream at 1080p 60 frames per second with like a 3500 bit rate. And essentially, folks, is that you're trying to produce an image this big with like this much data spread out this much. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is that if you're not feeding a stream enough bit rate to look good, it's just not going to look good. Plain and simple. Like, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of hard to make something out of nothing, if that makes sense. So if you don't have a high enough bit rate to feed the fast frame rate and the high resolution that you're trying to stream at, it's going to look really, really bad. And especially if you don't have transcoding options available, in my humble opinion, if you're not a partner on Twitch, you should not be streaming at 1080p 60 at all, mainly because to get a decent quality, you know, to get a decent looking stream on Twitch at 1080p 60 frames per second, you want to give it at least an 8,000 kilobit per second bit rate. And unfortunately, you're not guaranteed transcoding options unless you are a partner. So let's say that you have your bitrate set to 8K, 1080p 60 frames per second, and somebody comes into your stream and they're on their mobile phone, and they can't watch your stream because it keeps getting cut out, it keeps getting shut off because their mobile data can't handle that bit rate you have set. You know what I mean? So again, if you're not a partner, if you are not a partner or at least an affiliate Try to stick to 720p, either 30 or 60 frames per second, with no higher than around a 6,000 kilobit per second bit rate here, okay? And you might be saying to yourself, well, how do I know my internet speeds? Not a problem, folks. I got you there with that too, okay? I'm going to cover up my IP address here, obviously, but this is how you can test your internet speeds here, okay? You want to go to speedtest.net, just hit go, and let it run. It's going to see what kind of ping you have, see what kind of jitter you have, and then it's also going to give you your download speeds and your upload speeds. So right here, my ping is around 7 milliseconds. I'm getting around 400 megabits per second down, which is what I'm paying for. So thank you, Spectrum. I do appreciate that. You might have some problems here in the area, but for the most part, they are pretty solid here. And for upload, looks like I'm getting around, on average here, 20 megabits per second. So for streaming, I always recommend that you have at minimum 10 megabits per second upload, just so you could stream at that 6,000 kilobits per second, and that you can also have some headroom above that for your, of course, the game, your voice chat app, whatever you might be using, or if you have other computers and users on your home network, just to give them some bandwidth as well too, okay? And everybody, look, it's that simple to get started on Twitch inside of OBS Studio or in Streamlabs OBS. You know, everybody always asks me, Terry, how do you start streaming? And I'm going to tell you all the exact same thing I tell them now. Just hit go live. You might really enjoy it. But everybody, look, hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. I love your beautiful faces. Happy streaming, and I will catch you all next time.